In this video, I want to show how to install, configure, set up, and secure Packetbeat so that it can be used with Elasticsearch and Kibana version 8. Packetbeat is a very useful tool for monitoring network traffic in your infrastructure. So I will demonstrate a bit of this in this video. And in a few days, I will be releasing a part 2 to this video. Part 2 will focus on configuring email alerts and notifications on top of Packetbeat. But for this video, I just want to focus on getting things up and running. Before we begin, we need to already have an instance of Elastic and Kibana up and running. So if you haven't done this yet, I will leave a link to a video in the description of this video that shows you how to do all that. The other thing we need is a server that we want to monitor. So if I pull up this window here, this is an SSH session to a new installation of Ubuntu 20.04, and we will be installing Packetbeat to this server. So before we begin, I want to say that if you find the contents of this video helpful, then give this video a like. And if you want to stay on top of the videos that we release, then you can subscribe to this channel. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to install Packetbeat to this new installation of Ubuntu 20.04. And you can find the installation instructions here on the Elastic website. I'm using the apt-get approach, and it's really just copy these 3 or 4 commands here. Get this public signing key, install dependency, add the repository reference, and then just update and install Packetbeat. So I'm going to copy each 4 of these commands and paste it to just one bash script that I can run. All right, so I'll open up, I'll just call it install.sh. Doesn't really matter what you call it. And I'll paste them all here. All right, so those are the 4 commands I talked about. Now let's just run it. And I'll pause until this is done. Okay, Packetbeat has been installed and we're ready to move on to the next step. Let's configure and set up Packetbeat next. So if you go to etc directory and then the Packetbeat directory, you're going to see here the configuration files that came with the installation of Packetbeat. So we'll open up the main one, which is packetbeat.yaml. So I'm going to talk about some of the configuration properties that are relevant to us. The first one is this packetbeat.interfaces.device. Right now it's set to any, which means it will monitor the packet information and network traffic for any network interface. But if you want, you could change it to a specific network interface that your server has. For example, we have the ETH0 on my particular server. And if we do this, basically we're monitoring traffic on just this network interface. But for now, I'll just set it to any for this demonstration. Next is the packetbeat.flows property. Because a lot of packets can be sent over a network each second, you can use this property to tell Packetbeat to create something called flows. And flows are groups of similar packets over a time interval of your choice, which in this case is a period of 10 seconds. Flows can make it easier to visualize and analyze packets in Kibana. I'm going to leave these settings the way they are here, but you can find more information about flows on the documentation over here. And you can see quite a few other options around down here, which could be relevant to you. Next is the packetbeat.protocols, which is a section that lists all the protocols that you want to monitor for packet information. And for most of these protocols, all you simply do is state the protocol name, right? So let's say, for example, Cassandra, and the port that you want to monitor on for those packet information. But some protocols requires different options. For example, the ICMP protocol, the option you need to set is enabled : true. And if you go to the Packetbeat documentation, what you're seeing here is a list of all supported protocols. And for each protocol, here on the left, you can actually click here and get more information about that specific protocol, which means you can get more information about the specific options that you can set in your configuration file here. But for now, I'm just going to leave these the way they are because I think they're fine for our demonstration purposes. Next is the setup.dashboards.enabled, and I'm going to set this to true because right now, if I go to Kibana and if I click on the menu and I go to dashboard, it's completely empty. This is because this is a new installation of Kibana. But in a few minutes, I'm going to run the setup command. And because I've set this to true, the setup will then load some default dashboards and visualizations into this dashboard area here. And those dashboards and visualizations will make it a lot easier for us to analyze the packet information. Next, for the Kibana setup, I need to specify our Kibana URL. I think I'm just going to take this over here, copy, and paste it in here. And then moving on to the Elastic setup. Here, I'm going to type in the address to my Elastic server. And I will actually use HTTPS. And for the user account, I'm going to use the Elastic super user. And these credentials are the credentials that I log into Kibana with whenever I need to use the super user account. Now, I think it is okay to use the Elastic super user for initial setup because the setup command that we're about to run in a few minutes is a one-time thing. But later, before we actually turn on Packetbeat for ongoing usage, we will need to replace this super user account with a less privileged user. This way, if our current server ever experiences a security breach, at least bad actors won't have access to our Elastic super user account. But for now, we'll leave these super user credentials here just so that we can run the setup in a moment. And I think that's pretty much all we need to do for this YAML configuration file. So now let's test our configuration file. I'm going to go to the USR share directory, then going to the Packetbeat directory, the binary directory. And to test our configuration file, I'm going to run this command, packetbeat test config, and the path to our configuration file, packetbeat.yaml. And on my particular machine, I also have to state the path.home, which is USR share Packetbeat, because that's where a lot of the resources and dependencies that are needed for running Packetbeat, and also the path.data var lib Packetbeat, because very shortly we need to create a key store to hold some secrets that we intend to use in our packetbeat.yaml file. So I have to state that here. I noticed that on some of my colleagues' machines, or sometimes on other servers, I don't have to explicitly state the path.home or the path.data, but in this case, I actually have to explicitly state it. All right, so this will test our configuration file to see if there's any errors in the file. So I'll hit enter. All right, everything looks good. And I will also test the output to make sure that the connection to Elastic and Kibana are okay. And there we go. It says okay for everything. On some people who have self-signed certificates for their Elastic, they might see warnings instead, but that should be fine as well. And with that, I believe we can actually go ahead and run the setup command. So it's the same command, but we change these flags here from test output to just setup. And this might take a minute or so. So I'm going to pause until this is finished. Okay, the setup seems to have been done. And now, if I go to our Kibana platform, I'm going to press refresh here. And now we can see some of the dashboards that have been loaded as part of our setup. And if I click on, for example, the overview, you can see here that these are some of the visualizations that come out of the box with Packetbeat. There's no data yet because we haven't turned on Packetbeat. The other thing we should check is if we go to our stack management, and if we click to the index management, we should see, oh, let me hit reload indices. Oh, maybe data streams. Right here it is. Under data streams, there's a Packetbeat. And then within these indices, you can see that an index for Packetbeat has been created. And also, if we click to discover, we should have an option here for Packetbeat. At this point, we are almost ready to turn on Packetbeat. But before we do that, we need to create a less privileged user for Packetbeat to use when publishing information to Elastic and Kibana. So if I go to the Packetbeat documentation, there's a section for creating a publishing user. And if I scroll down a little bit, these are the fewest number of privileges needed for Packetbeat to connect to Elastic and submit publishing information. So let's go ahead and create this role first, then assign this role to a new user that we're about to create. And then let's see what happens. So if I go to this menu here, and if I go to stack management, and then if I click to roles, security roles, let's create that Packetbeat role. We can call it anything we want. And the privileges are, let's take a look again, monitor and read underscore ILM, monitor, read underscore index life cycle management. All right, and then the other thing we need is the create doc privilege on the Packetbeat index. So this Packetbeat index, whoops, let's click on this. Okay, it's not clicking, so let me just type it in. Packetbeat star, there we go. And the privilege we need is the create document, create underscore doc. Whoops. There we go. And I will go ahead and press create role. Now with that role made, let's create a user for our Packetbeat YAML configuration file to use. Okay, for the username, I'll type anything I want. I'll just say Packetbeat publisher. Full name doesn't really matter. Email address also doesn't really matter because I don't intend on sending myself a reset password or anything like that. For the password, I'll just use something very simple, ABCD1234. But for your production usage, you should probably use something more secure. For the role, let's pick the role that we just created. And that's it. Let's just create the user. And at this point, I could just go to my YAML file, packetbeat.yaml. And let's go to the users area. Now here, I could just change the username to Packetbeat publisher and use the password ABCD1234, enable and start Packetbeat, and everything could work. But I don't think putting username password into a file like this is that secure. I think I prefer to use an ID, a colon, and an actual API key. So let's generate an API key for this new user that we created, this Packetbeat publisher user. Let's go to the dev tools here, and we're going to make a REST API call to generate that API token for our Packetbeat publisher. So I already have the command created in advance, so let me just copy and paste that into here. So what this is saying is we're going to ping the endpoint. We're going to send a post request to this endpoint here. And the properties we need to say is we're going to try to authenticate with password. So this is our Packetbeat publisher. This is the password used to log in for this user. And let's generate an API token for these two users. And we're going to call that API token or that API key a human readable name called Packetbeat Publisher, but this can be anything you want. So let's go ahead and create that API token, right? And here's the API key. And I'm going to have to save this. So let's put this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ID and I'm going to paste it down here. And I'm going to take this API key and I'm going to place it side by side, but separate by a colon. And I could take this and paste it. Well, actually what I should do is I should remove these two lines now. And I could paste it in here. But I don't like storing sensitive information in a configuration file like this, because if bad actors gain access to this file, they gain access to the key. So I'm going to use a key store to encrypt this piece of information. And once that key store encrypts this information, it will load it in as an environment variable into this file. And we're going to call this environment variable ES_API key. And now we're going to use the Packetbeat key store to encrypt this piece of information. So let's go to USR share Packetbeat, and I believe we have, let's use this command, our setup command. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to key store add ES key API key, because API key is the environment variable that we created or that we intend to use in our YAML configuration file. I'll hit enter. Right. Go into the binary directory. All right, now run this. And we didn't create the key store file yet, so Packetbeat is smart enough to recognize that and is asking us, do you want to create it now? And I'll just say yes. Enter the value for ES API key, which is this, and I'll paste it in. All right, and that's it. So now our packetbeat.yaml file for the API key property, it will load this value the moment we start up and run Packetbeat. So let's go systemctl enable packetbeat.service, systemctl start packetbeat.service. And I'll just take a look at the journal CTL to see if there are any errors. And, so it's just starting up. So let's give it a moment. All right, let's check again. Looks like there are some failures, maybe. Yeah, it looks like there are some errors. I know why this is. I've encountered this before. Actually, I don't know why it occurs, but I know how to solve the problem. Part of the problem is that I believe the Packetbeat user needs one more privilege that's not mentioned in the documentation. So if I click to users and I click to the Packetbeat publisher, if I give it the editor role, then I think that will fix the problem. It's not mentioned in this documentation. It says these are the fewest number of privileges that are needed, but for whatever reason, I find that it didn't work for me, so I have to add the editor role as well. Now, when I do this, the API key that we created is still using the privileges of a few minutes ago whenever we created this. So what we actually need to do is revoke this API key and actually recreate it so that it adopts the new roles and permissions that we just set. So let's go back to our dev tools and let's run this API call again to generate a new API key, which is this. I'm going to delete everything here and paste this in, and we're going to recreate to this colon API key Let's copy this. Let's run our key store command again. All right, we're going to overwrite that variable. Yes, overwrite it. Paste in the value. And now let's systemctl restart Packetbeat. And while Packetbeat is restarting, let me just return to Kibana. And if I click on the Discover tab, once Packetbeat has completely restarted, we should see some results here. So I'll pause for a moment. All right, and we're starting to see some information in here. And if I click to some of the dashboards, let's say if I click to the overview, okay, and we see some information in here. Over time, more of these visualizations should populate. Let's just quickly see if there's anything else interesting. We don't have many of these other applications installed, so we might not see any information for them. We did configure flows earlier, so let's see if anything comes in here. And here you see some flow information as well. Coming back to the Packetbeat overview dashboard, you can see that this client IP locations map isn't plotting any information. And one thing I like to do is set up GeoIP enrichment so that Elasticsearch can translate IP addresses to geographic information. Then Kibana can plot data to this map. But this requires two steps. The first step is to check if Elasticsearch has GeoIP information in the first place. The GeoIP information should have automatically downloaded into Elasticsearch at the time you start up Elasticsearch. But from my experience, sometimes this download fails and we need to tell Elasticsearch to retry the download. So let's check this out first. So I'm going to go to DevTools, and what I'm going to do is I just want to check to see if the GeoIP information is there. And I can do it with this command, a get request to the ingest GeoIP stats. So I'll run this. Right, and again, with my Elastic installation, it seems to have failed to download the GeoIP information. Sometimes it seems to have worked and sometimes it doesn't. So what I'm going to do is, I don't know the official way on how to tell Elasticsearch to retry the download, but I have another way that works for me. So I'll try to demonstrate that way. To demonstrate, I'm going to SSH into my Elastic server. So I've done that here. And Elasticsearch is running. But I'm still going to go to the Elasticsearch directory under the etc directory. Then I'm going to open up elasticsearch.yaml file. And if I scroll down, actually it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go all the way to the end of the file. And I'm going to add a new property to stop Elasticsearch from trying to automatically download GeoIP information. And I can do that with this property here, ingest.geoip.downloader.enabled. And I'm going to set that to false. And with that, I'm just going to restart Elasticsearch. And I'll give it a moment. All right, Elasticsearch should have restarted. Now, if I run the same query again, good. It shows that there were no attempts to download GeoIP. And now I'm going to go back to my file, elasticsearch.yaml file. I'm going to delete this line this time. And now I'm going to restart Elasticsearch again. So I'll give it a moment. Okay, Elastic seemed to have restarted. Now, if I run this get request, oh, service unavailable. So maybe it hasn't restarted yet. So we'll give it a little bit more time. Okay, this time it has fully restarted. And now you can see the GeoIP has successfully downloaded this time. And this is the amount of time it took. And it created these temporary files. And I believe these GeoIP files will update automatically over time. And so that was step one, which was to make sure Elasticsearch had the GeoIP information in the first place. So let's move on to step two. So in step two, we need to set up an ingestion pipeline that uses this GeoIP information and for Packetbeat to actually use this pipeline. So let me pull up some documentation. All right, so here is the documentation for Packetbeat GeoIP. And what we need to do is, let's just copy this put request to the API endpoint ingest pipeline GeoIP info, because this put request is going to set up the GeoIP pipeline. So let's copy this and I'll paste it in here and just run it. Oh, let me scroll up. Over here. All right, and that seems successful. And we can double check things just by taking the same command. Oops, how come it's not letting me copy? Copy. All right. Same command, except just change it to get, and we can make sure that the structure of our pipeline looks correct. Yep, it looks like it's using the appropriate GeoIP files. Okay, so this seems good. Now let's tell Packetbeat to actually use this pipeline when publishing event data to Elasticsearch. And we can do that by adding this property to our packetbeat.yaml file. So let me go to my Packetbeat server, or the server that has Packetbeat on it, etc packetbeat vi packetbeat.yaml file. And let's add it right here. Right, so output.elasticsearch.pipeline. And we're going to use this pipeline name, which must match exactly the name of the pipeline that we created right here. And that should be it. Let's restart Packetbeat. All right, so this might take a moment. I'll just pause. Okay, it seems like Packetbeat restarted. So let's come back to our dashboards. Packetbeat overview, and let's see if this map is starting to have some information. If I scroll out. Okay, I'll give it just a little bit more time. Okay, I'll see if anything has come up on this map yet. And if not, maybe I can also check the discover. And one of the properties that should exist now is something that's related to, yep. All right, so this is a good sign. The fact that the geo destination.geo appears and client.geo. Oh, okay, so geo. All right, so maybe it hasn't appeared yet. So I'll give it a little bit more time. All right, so it looked like it just took a few more minutes, but we can see that now the client.geo property also exists. And we can always, let's say, for example, I'll take a look at the country ISO code and country name. And okay, they're empty, but let's filter where client.geo.country ISO is anything. Right, so you can see there are some records with Australia. And if oh, there we go. My map is starting to show information. This is actually where my server is located in Australia. So we can see that some requests are being made to it from other client devices in Australia. Okay, so looks like the GeoIP information is loading up now. So at this point, let's just quickly set up a second server to make sure it can also publish information with Packetbeat. So I have another server here in a different part of the world, and I'll run through the same installation steps, except I don't need to run the setups. So let's go over here. So I'm going to copy these instructions. Whoops, I don't need to paste that. All right, and let's go ahead and run this. I'll give it a moment. Okay, everything installed. So now let's configure Packetbeat on this server. Okay, most of these things can stay the same. I just want to get straight to the Kibana area, right? So we don't need to enable dashboards because we've already done that from the setup earlier on. And all we need to do is just paste in the Kibana URL. And let's set up the Elastic connection. And here it is. We are using SSL. And we are going to use the key store for this. All right, and that's all we have to do. Oh, no, we still need the pipeline as well. I believe that's the correct. Let me just double check. GeoIP info, GeoIP, yep, that's right. Okay, let's set up our key store. Beat key store add ES API key path.home is sorry. And we're going to put the key store file in this directory. Oh, yeah, we'll create it. Let's copy from the notepad that we got earlier on, paste in here. Okay, systemctl. Systemctl start Packetbeat. Okay, so in a moment, we should see some more information from server number 2. In fact, let's host.name Evermite. Oh, looks like we're already getting something. All right, looks like we have something. So that might mean in our dashboard for the overview, perhaps if I scroll out. Okay, nothing yet. Okay, I'll give it a moment and we might see more information. Actually, I don't remember where I set up that other server, but I guess we'll find out in a moment. Okay, now it's appearing. So there are client devices in California trying to connect to my California server, just like there are client devices in Australia trying to connect to my Australia servers. So there we go. This concludes part 1 of Packetbeat, where we focused on installation, configuration, setup, and security. Very soon, we will be releasing part 2 that focuses on setting up alerts and notifications around Packetbeat. If you found this video useful, help us out by pressing the like button. And if you want to stay informed of new videos as we release them, then you can subscribe to this channel.